Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig, it's 9 o'clock, and that means it's time for a Talk Magic. And today I have a legend on the show, and I genuinely mean this. This is somebody who I've been wanting to get on for a long time. One, I'm a big fan of their work. Two, they have literally been there, done that, bought the t-shirt and then some. They travel the world performing shows all over, very unique magic shows, very different to a lot of other people. Been on TV a ton, including shows like Britain's Got Talent. And on top of that, they have the most interesting origin story of any magician I have ever heard. Very inspirational, very motivational. I am, of course, talking about the one and only Kevin McMahon, Kevin Quantum. Kevin, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. That's such a lovely introduction. I'm feeling pretty psyched now about the whole thing.
It's true, though. You have achieved so much, especially considering, and we'll get into this in a minute, but especially considering you got into magic quite late on in life. You've achieved so much. Like just off camera earlier on, you were talking to me about how you're shipping props over to Australia. You're going to be in Australia for a month, and then you're going here, then you're going there. I mean, you know, wow is all I can say. Wow.
I've had a great career. I mean, so far, I feel like, I started magic about 15 years later than everyone else did. I'm 40 now, and, I've been doing magic for 15, 16 years, whereas most people who are 40 have done it for like about 25, So in many respects, I still see myself as new into magic compared to some of my peers who are even like 20, 25, 30 years old. But yeah, I've had such a wonderful career so far. I think there's obviously the best is to come, but I love it. I love every moment of it, and I'm so feel really blessed to be where I am.
That's amazing. And we're gonna jump into it straight away, because for people who don't know who you are, and there's a lot of listeners on this channel who are from literally all over the world. So for people who don't know who you are,
yes,
let's talk about your origin story, because most people I speak to on this channel, and I ask them their origin story, it's, oh, my uncle pulled a coin from behind my ear. And that couldn't be more different if you tried when it comes to how you got into magic. Would you mind explaining exactly what happened and how you came to be Kevin Quantum and that whole...
Yeah, Kevin Quantum's a sort of secondary story, but how I got into magic, it's very different. I wasn't really into magic as a kid, unlike most magicians that you meet. I got into it in my mid-20s by accident, which is a bizarre thing to say out loud. But that accident was a TV show, a reality television show here in the UK called Faking It. The show, it's not on television anymore, but it was a very popular Channel 4 show, viewed by millions of people around the world and translated into lots of different languages as well, as I found out after the show. But the main premise was transformation. The idea that, which is obviously a very popular magician theme as well, but this was a transformation of job, of skill set. So you'd start off with one skill set, and then you'd train for 4 weeks to do another one, and they would test you at the end of this 4-week period. And if you managed to pick up the skill, you'd faked it. And this was the idea. This was what it was called, Faking It. That was a show. So they give you, in this 4 weeks, they give you really expert training. They drop you in the deep end with a whole bunch of weird things. And then at the end, you have to convince these panel of expert judges, right? That's the idea that you've picked up this new skill. So it's best usually to talk about this through example. Past episodes have had a sheep shearer trained to be a hairdresser, right? So that was quite a funny lateral opposite. There was a ballet dancer who became a bouncer. There was a classical cellist who became a DJ. There was a minister who became a secondhand car salesman. You can see where this is going, always quite lateral opposites. But there was one episode where they took a quiet, mild-mannered physicist, a research scientist, which was me, a physicist, and trained him to be a magician. And that's how I got into magic, through this show. And it was quite a whirlwind experience. Some of the biggest names in the magic world were involved in this show. I didn't really know that at the time, but people like Penn and Teller, Paul Daniels, Pat Page, Mandy Mooden, Britain's Got Talent star, Nigel Mead, who you might not have heard of, does a lot of consultancy work, but did some TV work 10, 15 years ago, all involved in this. I was mentored by Pat Page, Mandy Mooden, and Nigel Mead, you always get allocated 3 mentors. Midway through this 4-week process, I was flown to Las Vegas from London, where I had a week with 2 guys called Penn and Teller, who I'm sure most of your listeners will know. And in that sort of couple of days I had with them, they taught me how to do their psychic surgery routine, which was ultimately the routine that got me over the line. I can talk about that later. When I came back, I was working intensely with Pat Page for 2 weeks, which again was a sort of kind of almost wasted on me at the time. You know, I've only really come to realize how lucky I was after the show had finished. And then at the end, the judge I had to convince that I was a magician was Paul Daniels. Sadly, again, no longer with us. He was the guy I had to convince, and I managed to do it. I faked it in front of Paul Daniels, which I could turn into a joke quite easily, but I'm not going to bother. And then and then I came back to Edinburgh, which is where I still live now. I decided to put my physics PhD on pause and become a magician.
Which leads me to my next question, which is this. I've got friends who are PhD students and spent so many years getting to the point that they can call themselves Doctor of Science, and it's such hard work. Like, I've got a friend called Alex who literally went through to almost his 30s doing, you know, research and stuff until he could call himself get his PhD. And it's something that you kind of have to love. You can't just fall into being a research scientist or fall into being having a PhD, studying for a PhD. So my question is, how did this program have such an impact on you that this 4-week process took you from something that you probably wanted to spend a long time of your life working towards to going, you know what, like you said, let's put that on hold. I'm going to be a magician. Now, obviously, in hindsight, it's worked out for you and then some. But I mean, that must have been a big risk almost. Like, what was your thought process with regards to that?
It's quite a big question. So I guess it centers around that moment, that very short period from when the show had finished to when I came back to Edinburgh, because I guess when I'd faked it, you know, when we had this celebratory moment after I fooled Paul Daniels, let's say, I was still intent on coming back to Edinburgh, becoming Dr. Kevin, and the thought of becoming a magician hadn't really crossed my mind. But what happened was I came back and I got behind my desk in my lab, and my head was just buzzing, you know, and I went to my sort of head of department and asked him for some time off, and he's like, some more time off? And I was like, yeah, I need some more time. I said, I'm sorry, my head's just not back in it yet. I took a couple of days, and I realized in that time, you know, that there's a few things that went through my head. First of all, that I had never been told by any careers advisor or by anyone for that matter of fact that I could make a career doing something like magic, right? So okay. Secondly, I'd had a ball doing magic on faking it. You know, I'd loved it. You're talking about how difficult doing a PhD is. Yeah, it's difficult until you try and do a fucking double lift, right? or like a second deal, you know, even more complex. Like that's difficult. No, like they are challenging. They take a intense amount of work over a long period of time. But ultimately, you know, you're making the world a better place. There's a really nice altruistic feel and vibe to PhDs, which you get a lot from it. But why did I want to leave that? Well, there was maybe the rebel inside of me as well that came to the fore. And you know, I felt like I came from quite a modest background, you know, just like my folks. This won't mean much to your American listeners or from outside of the UK, but I lived in a council house. We kind of, I was one of 4 kids, it was a busy house, you know, didn't have anything, you know, had a good head on my shoulders, and because I was good at physics and maths at school, then that was the path I was on. You know, there was no sort of take a risk and do this. My family were quite risk adverse. You know, you get a 9-to-5 job, you're not an entrepreneur, you just get your head down, you work hard, and nothing wrong with that. Like, that's a really lovely way to live your life, and I think that was what I was planning on doing as well. But then this thing came out of the blue and said, oh, you know, you can do something else. You know, you could do this. You could be a magician. You could try this out. And And I'd never taken any big risks in my life before. And I think I felt at that point, if I don't do this now, I never will. And so I decided in that 2-day period, I was going to put the physics PhD on pause, still on pause, and become a magician. And yeah, that's what happened. That's what went through my head, I guess.
So you've made this kind of big life choice. I'm going to be a magician, which is amazing, and I love that attitude. So kind of what happened? Like, because obviously from memory, and it was the 90s, so I'm going back a long time, but you were focusing on stage magic when you did Faking It. It was
2000s, mid-2000s.
Yeah, mid-2000s. It was going through, it was stage magic from what I remember.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was a stage magic. So, and that's what you do now. You do a lot of stage shows.
Yeah.
But generally, as a rule, in magic, there's more close-up work than there is stage work. It's easier to break into the industry, doing close-up and doing kids and that sort of thing. So you kind of going, right, okay, I'm going to become a magician. What was the plan to get work and to have an income? Were you going to, right, I'm going to go and do stage shows? Or did you think, right, okay, I'm going to have to buy a copy of Royal Road and start doing, I'm hitting the restaurants? Or what was the plan to do that?
Well, at the start, there wasn't really a plan. I think that's probably the first thing I should point out. But I knew that I didn't, my folks and friends and family around me were saying, well, why don't you try and balance the two? And in my head, I was like, if I do that, I'm not fully one way or the other. I don't think I'm going to be doing it justice if I have to split my time like that. I just want to really go for it, because when you put yourself under that kind of pressure, that's when when you make things happen. And so at that moment in time, I quit my PhD. That I didn't have any income coming in. So a few things happened. First of all, my mentor, Nigel Mead, had this massive contract with TGI Fridays. He was like supplying magicians to like every TGI Fridays in the world or something at one point. It felt that way anyway. And he got me a residency in Glasgow at TGI Fridays. That was great, but it wasn't enough, just doing one Saturday a week for 3 hours. So I started tutoring maths and physics to high school children, which I was quite good at. But still, that wasn't enough either. It wasn't as regular because there's holidays and whatnot too. So I got my old job back, my old student job back at McDonald's as well, which is where I worked for a year after Faking It. In fact, like I'm happy to say this now, but it was quite sort of heartbreaking. Like after the Faking It show had aired, I was working at McDonald's the next day, and someone came into the restaurant, and they recognized me, but they couldn't place me. And I was working behind the counter, and I was mortified. I felt like I built this thing up on the Faking It show of this person who's now a magician and blah, blah. There I am working behind the counter at McDonald's again, which of course is nothing wrong with, but it wasn't in line with what had been projected on this show. So that conflict inside of me came to the fore. And when he did eventually recognize me, I was just sort of really quite crestfallen at that moment that this show had put me on this pedestal as someone who'd done this, and here I was. And what could be said to be a completely contrasting job. And so that was one of the sort of like the moments in my career that sort of really made me focus, like, let's say, refocus on what was important. But yeah, that was what got me through the first year. And like even after the end of that first year, I had a bit of a wobble, and I was thinking about just becoming a physics teacher. And I remember I spoke to my mate John, and he was like saying, it's just been a year, get a fucking grip, just dig in. Because he was a bit more of an entrepreneur. He was like asking me what I was doing. So at that moment in time, what I did was I signed up to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I booked a theatre. It was like 6 or 7, 8 months in advance, and I worked towards that as a goal. And that was the sort of the moment where I could stop doing everything else, the tutoring, the restaurant work, and do magic. Now, that Fringe show was rough around the edges. It was called Tricks I've Learned Since Being on Telly. Thanks to Noel Qualter for that title. He's helped me out with a few titles over the years. Noel Qualter is a brilliant London magician here in the UK.
He's amazing.
But also at the same time, I started getting into the world of close-up magic. as you say, the barrier to entry for close-up magic very low. You know, there's not much you need to get in to become a close-up magician. That's a great thing, also a bad thing, but it was a great thing for me at that point. The other thing was, at that point, was this internet revolution had happened. You know, a lot of the old traditional agency structure of how do you get gigs through an agent, that had started to decay, and people that had very well optimized websites were getting more and more bookings. Now, I was one of those people that was quite tech savvy, let's just say, so I was able to make my website one of those ones that performed well, and then with an amicable personality, which I would say is one of my traits, and an ability to adapt to people around me, which again is a good thing to have as a close-up magician. I was able to build in a very short space of time a very comfortable living as probably becoming one of Scotland's top close-up magicians within the space of like 12 to 18 months.
Wow. That's brilliant. Living the dream. I mean, you know, you and proof that it doesn't happen straight away, but you've just got to have resolve. You've got to stick to it, and you know, it can happen if you've got desire to succeed, right?
Oh yeah, there's lots of hustle as well. You know, I don't want to bore people, all the wedding fairs and the trade shows and the networking and the free shows and all that sort of stuff. But at that point in my career, close-up magic was what paid the bills. Absolutely. I did fringe shows, but they were more of a sort of flight of fancy. Comedy clubs were there bubbling away in the background. But at this point, I know, and in my head as well, I was like, I'm not a scientist anymore. I'm a magician. You know, that was my headspace. And I was trying to get as far away from science as possible. I was learning how to do, you know, all of the moves, like Martin Sanderson's, you know, classic DVD, corporate close-up DVD, all of that, the James Brown stuff when it came out. I mean, Pop Jam, I was like, DVDs were the thing when I was just getting in, you know, and the sort of digital revolution hadn't quite kicked in, and I was buying all these DVDs from whenever I was down in London at International, whatever, at RSVP, and just absorbing. Is how the hell did that lemon appear under the cup? I remember watching Martin Sanderson do a chop cup routine, still wet behind the ears, you know, and then learning it and getting better at it, and eventually then performing it, and still performing it now.
That's great. Well, I've got two
Actually, I
questions.
remember you did some work on the chop, because I did like when I started doing chop. I've always meant to bring this up with you. Actually, I was using like a rolled up banknote with a small neodymium magnet inside of it with a ring, and I'd been doing this for a while. And you launched a DVD on it. I was, well, I should have done something. I should have told the world myself about my own chop cup devices. And like you and I have probably been just working on this simultaneously, and but like, you know, it was just, I'm not claiming
No,
or whatever.
awesome.
You know?
It is something that you kind of think of, don't you? You think, well, you know, how can we do a chop cup without actually using a chop cup? So yeah, it's a smart thing to do. I've got a couple of questions on this. The first question is, during that period of time where you were kind of struggling a little bit,
Yeah.
did you ever consider kind of going, you know what, I'm going to be a kids entertainer? Because that's something that a lot of magicians do. Or was it kind of like, no, I'm going to stay the course?
I never saw like, so you're almost saying like kids entertainer was like a step down or back?
Not at all. I run the largest children's entertainment company in the UK. I love kids entertainment. I think it's amazing. And I think a lot of people do look down on kids entertainment. It's just, I've never seen you like promoted as a kids entertainer. I just wondered if that's something that you ever did.
No, I never really sort of appealed to me. You know, I guess like I've always wanted to do things that I liked doing, and nothing wrong with that. Like, I think in the Edinburgh area, certainly the market was very much tied up with Tricky Ricky and Gary James and a few others, and I met them at the Circle, and they were so good at what they did. You know, I just didn't feel like that my style was suited to that. I don't know. Like maybe it could have done. I do like pantomime. Like, for me, a lot of kids' party magic shows aren't really magic shows. It's more about the interaction and the pantomime, the tease. The magic just is almost the wrapper that you use to sell it to the mums and dads. Like, at least that's my like sort of outside looking in, which is fine, of course. But I kind of liked this idea of using these really sort of hard to master magic techniques like misdirection, like sleight of hand, which felt were maybe less prominent in a display of skill with children, where I mean they were still there, but it's less on display, as it is with mentalism, for instance, which has never really been my cup of tea either. So at that point in time, I was very much there. That doesn't mean to say that, you know, a lot of the shows I do are suitable for children, and they come along with their families. I don't think I've got the skills to manage like a room full of children without parents and families on hand, because I think it's a different thing. You know, I was watching Gary Dunn perform at a hotel. Took my family up north, and Gary Dunn.
He's incredible, isn't he, Gary Dunn?
Yeah, he's brilliant. He was like the magician there, and I was watching him. Said hi to him before, and just watching all the layers of what he did over this hour-long show, and the attention that he managed to draw to himself from all the children in the room for that period, almost uninterrupted, just throughout. It was phenomenal. It's just like watching a masterclass. But back to sort of the question, yeah, it didn't. It wasn't a conscious decision, you know. I just felt like I was on. I was looking at close-up magic. I'd done that at the restaurants. You know, maybe if I'd been trained by a magician who'd done more kids entertaining, I would have gone down that road. I still think, you know, I still think there's a really good kids show in me. You know what I mean? I loved watching Gary Dunn, Gary James. There's a few others down south that.
You know what? I mean, you talk about the Fringe. Somebody, you know, Morgan and West are known as being serious adult performers, but they've also got an incredible kids show and science show that they tour with.
Oh, they're family. They're family entertainers, like, definitely. And I would say I'm not too I think most magicians are. That's one of the great things about it. It's one of those few forms of entertainment that can bring the kids and the grannies and the granddads, the 20-somethings, the grumpy, bring them all together for one thing. So, like, I don't think it's wise to shy away from that, really. You know, I think even Darren's show, I went to see him in Edinburgh Playhouse, there was a lot of, you know, it's 12 and over. There's the 8-year-olds, and, you know, people were in there as family groups just watching a really entertaining show. So yeah, I just, like, it wasn't about staying the course. It was just because that would suggest that I was like being drawn away by kids entertainment, but I never felt that. I just it wasn't a path that I was on, and it was never something that I was thought about. Never something that anyone said, "Oh, you should be a kids entertainer." No one ever said. So I was just isolated from that world.
That's fair. But the other thing is, you know, you've just described that period of your life as you were like probably one of Scotland's busiest close-up magicians.
Yeah.
I think of you as a stage performer. Everything I've ever seen you do or promote is you performing on stage, and you know, every year you're at the Fringe, and you know, you're doing shows everywhere. So how did we go from now a successful close-up magician, probably doing weddings and corporates and private parties and really just dominating that area?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you still do close-up now, but really that's not the main thing. How did you go from that to what you're doing now? Was that a conscious decision, or was that something that happened by accident? And what process did you go through?
Right. So, at that point, you know, I was really, it was a very easy life. I remember it was like waking up at after 10 in the morning. I'd put on fucking Star Trek or whatever, you know, for a few hours, and I didn't have to work hard at all, really. Just phone kept on ringing, the inquiries kept on coming in. I was working in, so I guess you'd probably call it a cartel. It was early internet days, and in the cloud, I think it was probably the first ever cloud booking system that any magicians had ever done. But myself, Alan Hudson, Rob James, and Noel Qualter had this collaboration where we had a shared Excel spreadsheet or some sort of Google spreadsheet, and we always put our availabilities onto it. So whenever a gig came in that one of us couldn't do, we could quickly check the spreadsheet, see who was available, and then lavish a huge amount of praise onto that magician and recommend them to this client. So we were keeping this body of work inside of our circle of people, and like, you know, the work was coming in from there. You know, the wedding fairs and things that I was doing, I've really gotten great at wedding fairs after having done a few of them. I managed to sort of get that, and I was hiring people to help. I had systems in place for most things, and if I didn't have a system, someone said, "Here, try this system," and I adopted it. And but like, I guess like there was a point where probably like a good 7, 8, 9, maybe even almost 10 years into being close-up magicians, and I remember seeing like Alan Hudson or other magicians at Blackpool being a bit jaded with close-up magic. And I was like, how could you be jaded with it? Like, this is such, you're getting paid so well for like a couple of hours of your time. Like, do you not realize what you've got here? This is such a lovely thing. But even still, what's it they say? Familiarity breeds contempt. And that was happening. I could see it. And I thought, I never want to be at that stage with close-up magic. So the other thing that happened was that I felt I was being a bit more, becoming a bit more of a commodity. What do I mean by that? I mean that when I was being booked, people were, it's like getting a plumber, you get free quotes and you go with the one in the middle or whatever, right? And I felt the same thing was happening with me as a close-up magician. I was ticking the magician box in a corporate event or at a student ball or at a wedding or whatever. They want a magician. They didn't want Kevin, right? Sometimes they wanted Kevin, but most of the time they wanted a magician. And I really felt like I could see my income had plateaued. It was a good income, don't get me wrong, but there was not really any room for it to go up. I was in competition with a whole bunch of other close-up magicians who were all very good, who all had great websites, blah, blah, blah. So I remember sitting down around the kitchen table with my wife and just like talking about this. And I really want, I'm feeling a bit sort of just unloved now. If I wanted just to be, I could be a plumber. I could work in finance. I could do something. I could feel this way and work in any other job and get paid 2 or 3 times as much, And I said, I want people to book Kevin. And then it was that point we decided that the only way to was I made a decision that I wanted 50% of my income to come from people paying 10, 20 pounds, whatever it was, to come and see one of my shows. This was the goal, right? To completely change my business, like literally shift the whole thing and spin it 180 degrees and go down, because stage magic is like completely different from close-up magic, regardless of what anyone says. And I felt I had to relearn a lot of that. Not relearn, I had to start from scratch because I'd only had 4 weeks training through faking it. And that's when I looked at the Fringe seriously and made a show. I think it was called Quantum Magic, and I was inspired by science. But like the point was, I decided I want to do that, and within, I think it was about 18 months, again, this must be the magic number for me, I'd managed to get, I think it was about 70 to 80% of my income coming from stage shows, and that had not interrupted but at the same time I had the capacity to grow into other areas. And I made a few decisions, and one of those decisions was to take my close-up fee and treble it. So I would not then take a booking for anything less than 3 times what I was taking for. And I lost loads of clients, like loads. And people were saying, but you were, and I said, it's not my main focus anymore. So, anything that's not my main focus, I have to be really well rewarded for, because it's taken me away from the thing that I really want to do. And that doesn't really sell well on the phone. So I changed that thing. I said, like, it's just, I don't know what I said, but I had to do that. And I had to go into a different level in terms of that, because I didn't want it, which is probably now why I've got the luxury of sitting here with you on a Friday night talking, because I don't have to take those bookings. And I had significantly fewer clients, but then it made me work. And I signed up to the Fringe, the Brighton Festival. I think there was other sort of rural touring networks that I was working at. I had to work a lot harder, had to make shows, had to fuck things up multiple times. But over about 18 months, I managed to get good enough to make an income from that. At least I still doing close up, but I was doing making more money from stage.
You talked about entrepreneurialism earlier, and one of the big things about being an entrepreneur is taking risks. And this is the second thing that you've told me where you've taken a massive risk. I mean, before, quitting your job and saying I'm going to be a magician is a risk, but having this successful business model as a close-up magician and going, you know what, I'm going to turn away a whole bunch of customers. I'm going to take that income. I'm going to push it away because I want to do something else. I believe I can do something else. And that's what I want to do. I have the desire and the passion to be there as opposed to here. And if I have to take a step backwards to take 5 steps forward, that's what I'm going to do. That's the most entrepreneurial thing I've ever heard. I mean, that's...
Yeah, but like the thing is, you only get one career, don't you? And I wanted to look back on my career and think, I I ticked all the box. I did everything, you know, the kind of Sinatra, I did it my way sort of thing. But that was a big thing for me. I didn't want it to be regretful. I didn't want to wake up at 50 and think like, oh, I wish I'd made a different choice when I was 35 or whatever. And I'm doing close-up, and I'm probably really good at close-up magic, and I'm probably making a good living, and I'm blah blah blah. But at the same time, like the life I have now is hectic, but oh god, it's so rewarding. Like it's doing this has opened up so many doors as well. That's the other weird thing. It's given me the confidence to feel good enough to put my work on television, like from Britain's Got Talent or whatever. And also introduced me to so many amazing people around the world. You know, I mean, all of this is going on like parallel with me running the Magic Festival, which is another thing that we'll probably come to as well. But that was those are the big milestones in my personal career. Around that time, I should also say as well that I was working with two guys called Gavin Oates and Colin McLeod. Colin McLeod now is known as Colin Cloud, who's quite a respected mind reader based out in Vegas at the moment. And we had a comedy sketch show together that we were doing called The Colour Ham, which was really, I mean, I think, Craig, like I genuinely feel like we were like, you know, as we'd say in Scotland, a ball hair away from making it, from cracking open this entertainment world and doing TV sketches and all that sort of stuff. But it wasn't to be, you know, and we all kind of went our separate ways. Colin went over America's Got Talent, did incredibly well, and that kind of sort of laid the groundwork for this really successful career he has now. My mate Gavin's just released his 4th book. It's like one of the Amazon top sellers. He's like a motivational speaker now with got a company that employs 15 people, and I'm here just doing my own thing as well. And like it was sad that when that never happened 10 years ago, but at the same time, it's sort of, we all found, I think, quite satisfaction in the paths and the journeys that we were on. And yeah, I don't think I've deviated there from that idea of close-up. Stage magic being my main focus, it always is now. And like I said to you before the podcast started today, that today was a really exciting day because I was taking delivery of a prop, you know, and this prop was just literally a piece of sketches on a piece of pad of paper like 3 or 4 months ago. And then over that period working with, you know, the joiner and the electrician and the metal worker, everyone who comes together to make these new things, we've now got this amazing set of devices which will make up this next 3 minutes in my next stage show. Which again, yeah, it's like I'm always looking, like when I first made the Cannonballs, which is the act that's had given me the most success, it's taken me around the world, and like pushed my sort of how would you call it, my fee level into this next bracket, this really it's the first act that I built that sort of cost, I mean, it cost me like 30 or 40 grand to develop. So just to make that money back, I needed to start charging 5 figures for this act to try and get to a sort of some sort of parity. It doesn't go out very much, don't get me wrong, but it was still, that's what it cost for me to unbox it, to pack it, to get all the kit for it, the fuel, all that sort of stuff. So it was another sort of milestone for me, and that was like a sort of another weird one, but it sort of was an interesting one to see how that would work. So it was a similar sort of thing, but it was in a different landscape. So ever since that point, I've been chasing the next like world, because I would call that the Cannonballs my first world-class act. I've got some really nice comedy acts, but anything that creates that level of spectacle, I'm hoping that this next one I'll be there. So I think probably I've got 3 now that I would class at that level. Mm-hmm. I've got a lot of really good acts, but if I'm talking about the kind of thing that works really well on television and could play across the world, I've probably only got 3 like 4-minute. I've got 12 minutes of material after 15 years that could work at that level. But yeah, I mean, some people have none, you know.
Exactly.
Have, you know, so.
Well, I want to ask you, because obviously you talk about the Cannonballs, which is obviously a signature piece of yours. When you transitioned into stage,
yeah,
is that where Kevin Quantum was born? Because
yeah, it was.
Because you said earlier on in the interview, you kind of moved away from science. You're a magician now. You wanted to have nothing to do with science.
Yeah.
every time I've seen you as Kevin Quantum, you're combining the two. And I think one of the most important things that magicians should look at, and they don't, is the character that you portray on stage. And, you know, when you talk about the Fringe, my friend Tom Crosby is the perfect example. He's a great magician, but he's the performing nerd. You know, that's Tom. And you're the physicist that does magic. Like, creating that character and going back to science, was that a conscious decision? What made you decide to go down that route when everything came to be?
Well, that's really insightful again. Yeah, I remember like I was good friends with John Vanderput, aka Piff the Magic Dragon, and you know, I remember him talking about when he got the Chihuahua and having the gimmick and the USP, and that these things that sort of built this brand, this interesting thing that people kind of expect from you. This is kind of hyper realized in a television environment, you know, that you kind of really need to know what you are and what you're doing for TV, you know, and really drill down on it. So that's one of the benefits of TV. It's also putting yourself in a box is quite a stressful thing to do too, which you've gone through as a parent, certainly, maybe as a consultant, maybe as a performer as well. I don't know everything you've done in your career, but yeah, when I wrote Quantum Magic, I kind of realized that there was a really interesting crossover here. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the world of physics at the tiniest level. They call it the quantum level, which is the more I looked into it, the more I realized that scientists just don't have a fucking clue what's going on. So instead, they start using the language of magic to describe things. They're saying this particle disappeared from here and reappeared over here. Then it transformed into something. And then you know, I'm like, wait a minute, these are magic words. these aren't you don't know what's going on, do you? And then like, no, we don't have a clue. And like the world of magic science, certainly, there's so many more amazing things that go on at that level that we have no idea about. But it made me realize I had written this little section in Quantum Magic where I talked about this sort of thing. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought like maybe that there's an alliteration there, that the k and the qu sounds rolls off the tongue nicely. It took a long time to get used to, but I thought, okay, I'll give Kevin Quantum a shot. And then the next year I came back with my first big stage offering, Illuminations, which was a show kind of exploring the theme of light inside of a magic show. And yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in that show. And I remember like that was the first time a magician had ever come up to me and offered to, like a famous magician, to buy one of my routines for their show. After it had taken place. I politely declined. You know, I kind of only really make magic for myself. A bit weird, a bit selfish like that. I'm like yourself. I just the stuff I make is so particular to me that I just don't think it has value outside of the Kevin Quantum world. But like, yeah, so that happened. I changed my name, right? And you know, you talk about this, oh, you should think about your character, blah, blah, blah. That's such a difficult process, right? I mean, it really is easy just saying that. And I used to say that a lot as well, but I'm still on that journey myself. And I've got a lot of time and understanding and consideration for anyone that even attempts to go on that journey, because it's so easy to stop and go back and or just do something else or whatever. To stay that course is really challenging. I had to work out ways to marry magic and science together. This was a huge problem, and I was really struggling with it, and that affected my character. And I went kind of too far one way, where I lost a lot of this comedy character that I was so comfortable with, which was more an extension of Kevin McMahon, let's just say. And I went too far one way, it didn't work at all, you know, and audiences were like, oh, I'm not sure about that. And then I remember like, it didn't work, and I wrote this other show after. Illuminations was okay, it didn't lose money, but it only made money because the original, I mean, this is the thing I've done every year, is make new magic. But and that show, I had this really nice thing with 3D glasses, and that was the thing that was interesting to other magicians. I also made a rainbow appear on stage without using water. I'd come up with this new idea using really small bits of plastic that kind of replicated what a raindrop does in a cloud, and I swapped the place of the sun, and I made all these things, and I made these rainbows appear on the stage, right? It was a very interesting idea, and people like novelty. You know, I've learned that in my career, that they like to see new things, which is why they keep coming to my show, is why I have to keep on coming up with new things. It's really exhausting. So the transition, yeah, just going back to that sort of key thing, was I wrote that show, and then the next show after Illuminations was Anti-Gravity, and that really struggled as well. And then I started doing 2 shows a day at the Fringe, and I started doing late night comedy. So I took all my comedy magic stuff, my sketch comedy stuff from the Colour Ham days, and I came up with this format. It's called And For My Next Trick, and the idea was that I'd have a timer, and the first trick would be 7 minutes, then next would be 6, then 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, and that would be the end of the show. But the thing was that made it interesting was I'd not finish a trick, or I'd mess a trick up or whatever, and then in that last minute I'd fix everything, and it had this it was a sheer really joyful show to perform. I had a lot of pace and energy. Audiences loved it, and people kept on coming to me saying, like, you know, I watched your science show. I really, it's very clever. You know, I hate this word, very clever. But I just saw you on stage and For My Next Trick, and I thought I really need to. And that took me 2 years to try and solve that problem, to try and bring them both together, until ultimately with, I think it was the 3rd Kevin Quantum show, I pitched to go over to Australia, and in that moment in time, I got a director and a magic consultant. Started working with a guy called Bill Miller, Dusty Miller, who I'm still working with. Just fucking legendary guy. We started working together and trying to work through some of these problems, and some of them taking years to solve. But we got there, and now what we have with Kevin Quantum is a really wonderful, warm, quirky product, which also has some really unique magic. But we're talking about that transformation. If you ever want to go on it, it takes a lot. It took years, and I think you shouldn't expect it to if you're maybe you'll get lucky and it'll take you less than a year. But for me, it took so long just to even get used to being called Kevin Quantum. You know, now it's fine, but that took years.
I can imagine. So here's a question. I mean, you're now. You've cracked it. You're Kevin Quantum. You're selling out shows all over the world. Your income's gone through the roof. What made you decide to do Britain's Got Talents? Because at that point you were there, like, weren't you? I mean, it's not like you were
not quite. I think Britain's Got Talent took it to a different level. Yeah, I mean, I think it's because it's the biggest thing, isn't it, in the UK, probably in America now and whatever. It's the biggest thing. Like, it's the biggest platform anyone in our business can aspire to. Maybe the Royal Variety Performance, but then they started using that as a prize. You know, it's a weird one. But that's the biggest thing. And I never felt ready. I never felt I had anything interesting or new to show. And then I came up with the Cannonballs in a show called Vanishing Point. And Vanishing Point was really about our vanishing attention spans, you know, because of devices and whatnot. But that was like, and infusing that with misdirection. That was the sort of underlying narrative for Kevin Quantum. On the face of it, was actually really, really lovely show, like with a lot of really nice ideas around misdirection. But the one thing that came from that was the Cannonballs, but it wasn't on fire. It was, I remember, like, I was with Dusty, with Bill Miller, that my consultant, and we were just sitting down in his place in Fife, and I'd brought with me a whole bunch of science toys that I'd bought on Amazon, just like buy, you know, like when you're coming up with ideas, you just want a bunch of stuff on a table to play with. And we were just playing with it, you know, just talking about different ideas. If you've ever watched the Beatles documentary on Prime, you know, there's this moment where they write Get Back, and it's just like, it's like watching Leonardo da Vinci just chip away the stone, and you suddenly hear this song come through that it's like, oh my God, it feels such a wonderful moment just to share and be a part of. And I think I had my first ever brainwave at that table, and the Cannonballs were, these little things were swinging back and forward, and in like less than a second, I'd worked out, you know, I just had a brainwave. The whole idea formed in my head, and my words were struggling to keep up with my thoughts, and Dusty couldn't keep up with what I was talking about. He saw a lot of potential. And I said, no, it's going to work. It can definitely work, and do this, and we'll do that, and blah blah blah, and then this will happen, and we can hold them with electromagnets, and we can swing them. We can do. I couldn't speak fast enough, and then our time finished together, and I'd left. And my head was buzzing, and at that point, like, I just started the process of, you know, learning about steel rope. You know, there's lots of different types of steel rope. Let me tell you, some have got core, some is not as good quality as others. I became an expert in steel rope, then I became an expert on polystyrene because the first cannonballs were made of polystyrene. Then an expert on different types of paint that are heat resistant, and then for the first time I met a metal worker to try and put these metal cores in. Then I learned about what unistrut was and all these different new building materials that were going to support the structure. And then I had to learn how to power electromagnets simultaneously, and learning about parallel and series currents, and then built this whole thing, and then realized it was working, but it was a bit shit. And then I took it to someone who knew what they were doing. They made it 100 times better and reliable, and then had this thing that just about worked. But like once I built it, I remember you talked about Britain's Got Talent. So this is a really nice piece of advice for anyone. Like I took the thing to Britain's Got Talent and said, I've got this thing, because Britain's Got Talent, if you do the Fringe or any sort of stage show, they'll tend to chase you rather than the other way around. And they've been chasing me for years. And I said, look, I've got something that I think is unique. I think it'd be quite good on TV. And I sent the video off, and they're like, I would like it, but I need something more. And, you know, there's only really 3 or 4 ways you can go in magic when they say that. It's like, make it bigger, put blades on it, add fire. And I was thinking about all of those things, and I thought, right, okay, I can probably add fire. And I said to them, but I don't have that yet. I don't have that. And they said, can you do it? I said, yeah, I can definitely do it, but it's going to cost money. I said, are you willing to fund that? And they agreed. They agreed to fund the investment in this new act. So I then went to professional prop builder, told them the problem, how much it's going to cost, and they said, this is how much it's going to cost. They gave me the invoice, and I said to Prince, here's the breakdown, here's the cost. You know, I'm not getting paid, it's all right. You know, you can keep your competition vibe going, but these guys need paid because they're making it. And I said, I want everything at the end, but you can have the premiere. And that was the deal. And they agreed to that. And so they essentially funded the next phase of development, which was that adding fire, and then obviously heat proofing. So the cladding on all of the props, the aluminium cladding, remaking the electromagnets. Like there's a lot of problems with the electromagnets. You might not know this, but electromagnets, when you heat them up, they don't behave. It's the same with any magnet. They just don't behave like they're meant to. So the electromagnets start to fail under the heat from the cannonball. So we had to supply the electromagnets with we had to use bigger electromagnets essentially to make this work. Anyway, you learn all these things whenever you start making this shit, and you become an expert in a new niche area that no one else has ever been an expert in. Anyway, so we built it. We put it on telly, and you know, right enough, one of the electromagnets failed, which is why one of the cannonballs went early. But we'd rehearsed it, fortunately, and I got through the cannonball. So that if you've not seen it before, there's 9 cannonballs. It's like a sort of Newton's cradle, you know, this science desk toy, but they're swinging like this. They're swinging like pendula, and there's 9 of them in a row. And rather than being like a small 1-inch steel ball, they're cannonballs about 25, 30 centimeter diameter. And they're on big wire rope, and they're suspended from the top of the theatre stage. And I set them on fire. I blindfold myself, and I walk through them without getting hurt. So it's less of a magic trick and more of a sort of big scale science experiment. But it's amazing. New. It's new, so that's what made it popular. And then from that, then I just got lots of. So I've done it on German television, like for different TV shows, as well as other Got Talents around the world. In various countries, Italy, Spain, Germany, France, done it over in Asia. So it's been one of those. It's the thing that got me through lockdown, because TV was on the up then, and this was a really easy televisable kind of thing.
That's amazing.
And so I'm talking a lot about that stuff.
And while all this is going on, though, Kevin, while everything's going on, and you're building your career as a stage magician, and you're doing all of this, you mentioned it earlier on. You've got the Edinburgh Magic Festival, which is running parallel. Would you mind talking to us about that? Would that be okay?
Yeah, of course. So this is something my wife and I do together, which is it's a festival of magic here in Edinburgh, which is, so I guess the title says. And it's a collection of live shows and workshops for children and outreach for schools and all that sort of stuff. And it's like it used to happen every summer. We moved it to Christmas a few years ago. I think mainly because we felt like Christmas was more a time when people are, there's a captive audience to go and see shows at Christmas. Everyone wants to go and see a panto, and this is like an alternative for if the pantos are busy or whatever. So we made this, and yeah, it's just sort of been it was a sideline. It was like something that I remember all the money I used to make for my corporate close-ups and things like that. I then just put all of that into Magic Fest, and every year I'd be like, what am I doing? Why am I spending 10 like 5 figures of money? But at the same time, what happened was, like, I'd invited people to Edinburgh to perform. I'd invited Paul Daniels to come up, David Berglass, Juan Tamariz, FISM winners like Hector Mancha. Pat Page never made it up, sadly, passed away before he could. But we had like Tom Soney receive the award. He'd received it one year, and that award was given to him by Penn and Teller. It's like we had these really wonderful moments, and like there's so many others that I can't even think. But it was all about the core goal of Magic Festivals to promote magic as an art form, right? So to sort of to take it away from this realm of trickery or puzzles or other things which are completely valid, right? But for the thing that interests me is the artistic pursuit of magic, how that manifests on stage or any sort of live performance aspect that shows some kind of originality that tries to affect you emotionally in some respect, which I think is what art is, something that affects you emotionally. And that's always been the goal. And yeah, we've done some great things over the years. And I just, a little thing I do is I have this little thing on my iCloud where I have this thankful list of things, like things that I'm really proud of every year that I've done. And like a big thing with this year was like the Magic Festival show. So as well as I produce shows now as well. So I write shows for other people to perform. Not necessarily magic shows, sometimes historical shows or theatre or drama or whatever. And one of the big shows we had this year was called Hogmanay House. Hogmanay is a fancy word for New Year in Scotland, and that was like a historical show with magic elements, but also live music and theatre and storytelling. Really fun. But simultaneously, we have this outreach thing for kids we've been doing for years called Magic School. Gary James has been the head teacher for years. During COVID, you probably had this. I started becoming a home teacher, a teacher for my daughter. My daughter and your son are not too dissimilar in age, and I found myself like, how do we pass the time? And we started making YouTube videos talking about the relationship between magic and science and how they overlap and how we could teach science and maths principles using magic. And then that got commissioned by the BBC and became like a mini BBC bite-size thing. So bite-size, this BBC Learning, BBC is like a main broadcasting TV company here in the UK, but bite-size is their sort of resource for their learning department for children. That got a whole bunch of funding during lockdown because kids were not at school and they needed somewhere to go. So I was part of that wave. And then I thought that was a great, that was a great end product for what was just me, my daughter, my iPhone, and my sort of dining room, just recording YouTube videos. But then like time went on, and I didn't want to let it end there. So what I've done in the last few months is this thing called Virtual Magic School. So this is it's mainly a school resource for 7 to 10-year-olds. It's tied to the curriculum in Scotland, also down in England. And it uses magic to teach numeracy and literacy, areas where kids have really suffered during lockdown, where there've been gaps in their learning through either being off school with COVID or through lockdown or whatever. This is a thing that's been designed to address those kind of key problems, but using magic as a vehicle. Now, underlying all of that is this really fun technology called Choose Your Own Adventure, or branching video technology, video hierarchy technology. When I was a kid, maybe you're the same, but I used to read these books, and after the first chapter, it'd be like, go to page 25 if you want to open the door, or go to page 50 if you want to run away. And you have to make a choice. Then the ending that you have with this book depends on the choices you make. I've loved it. And anyway, technology has progressed now, and we have this interactive video It's like a very much gamified technology, and it's like 83% more engaging than a standard linear video, right? So we're already talking like huge amount of actual engagement from the kids. So we built like an 8-lesson course, which is completely free to all children, all schools in the UK, around the world, really. If you're English speaking, this will have validity, but it's specifically tied to the Scottish and English curriculum. So that's going to be launched on the, I don't know what, Friday 20th, 25th of January. And yeah, you'll be able to get, it's like over 300 videos that I've linked together in a hierarchy, so that, you know, it's, and I've also, the other great thing is I managed to gamify a lot of, so you know how sometimes you have these like self-working magic tricks that work online. So for instance, the princess card trick, you have the 5 cards, think of one, take them away, put 4 cards, I got your card, yeah, right? So that's a really cool idea for a self-working trick that can work without you being in the room, right? They just have to watch a video of you. And there's a bunch of them like that. But there's some that you need to be in the room for, say, for instance, a 21 card trick, right? Which row is your card in, that one, or that one, and you pile them up in a certain way and redeal them. Well, I've managed to sort of use this hierarchical software to recreate the 21 card trick. That's a good example. There's a few others as well. Using this software, so I can perform the 21 card trick to you, and your choices then will allow the virtual version of Kevin the magician to work out your card in that sort of world. But we've bent it all towards the curriculum for entertainment, and again, we got funding for it from the Scottish Arts Council, the digital arm that they have, as well as, and then I used sort of leveraged that against some of my corporate clients, so some big fund management companies up here in Edinburgh and others that are fans of my work. This is another thing that, again, young magicians or whatever, when you're making these contacts, you're doing a close-up magic gig, that's just the start of a relationship, you know, that don't let it end there. Like there's so much more that, and don't bug people, but like in the future there'll be a time when they can help you or you can help them with something, and you just need that conversation to keep on going, and you can work out where that's going to come from. So this company, Bailey Gifford, like this, you'll never have heard of them, but they own like a quarter of Amazon. They own about 20% of Tesla. Like one of the biggest. They're based in Edinburgh. They have a massive funding project for the arts world, and I did close-up gig for them about 12, 13 years ago, and I've always stayed in touch. And that's now, you know, there's a lot of benefits, as you can imagine, there from that relationship. And this is one of them, this free resource that I'm really happy with, hours and hours of work. It's like the same amount of work you get from 2 or 3 really well-paid corporates. I said I've just spent that time doing this thing for the festival for kids around Scotland. So that was great. We gave away 500 tickets to the refugees for Ukrainian refugees here in Edinburgh during Magic Festival. There's our first big Christmas show. We brought Hector Mancho over from Spain. He was fantastic. I don't know if you know his work. You get him on the podcast. He's brilliant. He released a book on pickpocketing recently. It's fantastic. And yeah, just weird things like, you know, Darren Aronofsky. I don't know if you're into your movies or not. Darren Aronofsky is sort of weird Hollywood director. He started coming to my shows in the Fringe and other weird things like that. And this year, just I think France has Got Talent, got this standing ovation in France. They were tough. And then working with Alan Cumming, you know the actor Alan Cumming?
Yes, yeah, very much.
So I did like a bunch of consultancy work for the National Theatre of Scotland. Did this big show and created this book that writes by itself. It looks like it's right of Harry Potter. I'll show you. I'll send you a video afterwards. And then a chair that sinks into the floor and various other really props that needed to be completely designed from the ground up. So I'm sorry, I'm just going through my sort of my sort of.
This is great. It's fantastic.
So those are so if I was to describe my creative practice, like the first primary thing is making this 1 hour worth of new material every year that I then tour and Fringe and whatnot. The second element is the private shows and the work and the clients and things like that. And then the rest of it's kind of Magic Fest driven. So within that private work is sometimes consultancy as well. So whether that's creating a new magic for companies or for theatre companies or for corporate companies, that kind of comes under that banner. and the Magic Fest is where the virtual magic school and that sort of stuff lives. So those three things, and again, this is the other thing about perseverance, which I know you're aware of as well, that sometimes like you can go for a while, years sometimes, without making money on a project, and then suddenly you just work out how to make it work. And then so something like Magic Fest that used to really cost a lot of money, I guess maybe my wife's father always used to say that Magic Fest will be successful when you're successful. And that's kind of true. And it's like an output for my work now, but that I can also use to like Tricky Ricky's 3 shows sold out. Magic Gareth did balloon modeling workshop here in Edinburgh, and his shows sold really well. Hector Mandra coming over from Scotland, Billy Reid, Lewis Barlow, Elliot Bibby, who you've had on the show, all doing shows this year and past years. And it's just great being able to, we've created this audience for magic in Edinburgh that can then benefit the local community, but also afford us the privilege to bring in other artists from overseas.
That's great. That's amazing. You have so much going on. You have so much. I'm tired just listening to you.
Yeah, I keep myself, like, that's the thing. Like, again, if you're for young magicians, like, this is a vocation. This isn't a job. And what's the difference between a vocation? A vocation is a way of life, and a job is like a 9 to 5, right? I don't, I'm like your son. I'm not going to come into your room at 9 in the morning, start bouncing in your bed, asking you a card, right? But I live, sleep, and breathe it. I work on. I do at night time. I will sit and happily sit, and it's not about practicing the cards. It's like about writing my scripts or getting my cues in order for my show, or emailing my prop designer, or getting the hierarchies right for this video. It's magic driven, but it's not all second deals and coin tricks and whatnot, which I love. Oh, that's the other thing. I know Steve Cohen's model for just, if anyone's ever up in Edinburgh, whenever I'm not on tour now, I have a residency here in a hotel in Edinburgh that on Saturday night. So if anyone's ever up in town in Edinburgh, look out for Edinburgh Magic. .co.uk, and you might be able to see. So this is like this home, because I have all this amazing close-up stuff, as I'm sure you do as well. Your time is suddenly you find yourself doing more creative, like maybe in your business and whenever you find yourself putting time into something else, and like, I really miss the close-up stuff. I really miss the my ambitious routine, or my chop cut routine, or my coin work, or all the stuff that I spent years doing, performed thousands of times. So I just made a home for it in this show called Edinburgh Magic, and then the theme's really nice. So I recreate magic tricks that have fooled people from the past. This was part of a bigger show called The Trick That Fooled that I wrote a few years ago during lockdown, which but the idea is, which was like people from around the world. This is people specifically related to Scotland in some regard. So the trick that fooled J.K. Rowling, or the trick that fooled Winston Churchill, or the trick that fooled Sean Connery, or the trick that fooled, and. Like, it's a really fun concept for a show, recreating these. Now, I've obviously taken a bit of creative license and made them for a more modern, sophisticated audience. All right, that's my excuse anyway. But it's a lovely sort of world to enter into, and you can find yourself then being fooled by this. You're sharing an emotional experience that perhaps your idol from 100 years ago experienced. That you're sharing that. I don't think anyone's ever really explored this before, connecting with history through the emotion of wonder. So recreating a magic trick that fooled someone 100 years ago, doing it in the present day, and then you feeling the same thing that, say, your hero's Winston Churchill felt when he saw that ambitious card routine being performed, or Abraham Lincoln when he saw the banknote transformation, or whatever it was, right? You're getting that connection with your historical icons. It's a really powerful thing, and I think it's quite unique, and it's another sort of string to my bow when I'm not on tour.
Wow. I'm going to ask you one last question, because I know you've got to go soon. So I'm going to ask you one last question. Everything that you've achieved, which is incredible. Like, to be clear, most magicians that are watching this, if they could say at the end of their career they're where you are now, they would be over the moon. Like, you have done so much. I've listened in the last hour, and I didn't even know half of the stuff that you've achieved. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Like, just incredible. Is there anything left on your magical bucket list that
Oh
you
yeah, of
you want
course.
to
Yeah,
achieve?
yeah.
Like, what are you seem very goal driven, you seem very goal
Mm.
orientated. Last question, Kevin. What are the goals that you want to achieve in magic moving forward? What is it that you would like to do? Because despite all of your success, and there's been a ton of success, you've never really, I've not seen you that much within the magic community. And it's probably because you're so busy running around the country doing other stuff, but you've done so much to popularize magic with everything that you're doing. And everybody in Scotland, like Elliot I spoke to the other day, he's like, oh, Kevin's amazing. Like, so many people who know you talk about how passionate you are about magic. And I don't think a lot of magicians see that. So I suppose it's twofold. What goals do you have? And would you like to become more sort of, I don't know if the word's known, but would you like to be doing more within the magic community?
Yeah. Yeah, that so yes to yes to both of those are not really yes or no questions. What goals and would I like to be known? I suppose they're linked, because one of my goals would be to get better known in the magic community. But like the big hairy goals, the goals or whatever they're called in the corporate world, the great big hairy whatever goal. Love to do an extended run in London, the West End, or ever in Broadway. I think I'd love to have that level of like the show I'm writing just now, Momentum, which will be the one that I'm taking to Australia and eventually to Edinburgh. That's got the scale, and I hope eventually the quality to be on a West End stage. So it's really, when I went to watch David Blaine and I saw this performer on stage, and I love David Blaine's show, like just with all my heart. I saw this guy doing magic that he created. It was so him. It was so brilliant. It was so bamboozling. It was so David Blaine that I came out and I was saying to my wife that that's probably the best magic show I've ever seen when I watched David Blaine do his stuff. Very closely followed by Darren Brown's most recent show, which I loved as well for many other reasons. But I look at David, I look at Darren, I look at Penn and Teller, and they're obviously like that's the career, that's the path, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of people love these guys, and I look at them, but I also in the back of my head think, yeah, I can do that. I know it's a bit of a sort of a. I never think that what they've accomplished is just so far out of reach now. I feel like okay, I don't think I'm ever going to achieve the same celebrity that Darren Brown's had. He's one of a kind. He's a genius. But that run of shows he had in Broadway when he took his show over earlier, and how he accomplished that. He wasn't really a well-known name. Okay, he had some Netflix specials coming out at that point too, but that was really interesting to watch that process happen. So big Broadway show, big West End show. Might have to delay that now with another kid on the way, but we'll see how that goes. I think those are the big things. I like TV as well, is always really, really interesting. I'd love to do one TV series or more if it was successful. And I'm constantly pitching. I'm constantly, I think all of us are, but always sort of, whenever I come up with an idea, I'm speaking to whomever my agents over in LA to see if it's interesting to anyone, if it's like the right time for this particular thing or whatever. That's always at the back of my mind. I think like recently, especially when I was chatting with Hector Mancha, because he's just done so much in terms of like winning FISM, manipulation, one of the hardest areas to be successful in magic. So it just takes so much time and effort. But also he came over and he blew me away with these suitcase shows for adults and kids that he brought to the man. He's such a wonderful guy, hilarious, got a lot of comic flair. Magic's not even his full-time job, and like I was just watching them thinking he's done, with the time available to him, he's done so much. And at the same time, like my wife and I, Svetlana, who I should really mention, she's like she's not a magician, but I'm really lucky to have a wife that loves magic. She's like she would come to every Blackpool if she possibly could, and she loves hanging out with magicians and whatnot. We used to sort of just choose random. This is another thing you should totally do. Just choose a random magic conference somewhere in Europe and just go, right? Like this is where we end up in Germany and Italy and all these wonderful places, making new friends with other weird magicians in different parts of the world, because we were weird ourselves. But I've always been fascinated by the magic community, and I've seen people like yourself. Like I would say we're contemporaries. I think we're probably similar age, similar sort of taking different paths in our career, but like I would say you're still my kind of contemporary, and seeing what they're accomplishing in the world of magic. one of my goals would be I'd love to compare a Blackpool or a South Tyneside or something like that. One of those kind of conventions. I think I've got the material and the gags and all that. I've never been asked before.
I'd love
maybe
to.
this.
Well, you know what? I know that Ross Stevens and Russ Brown, two of the organisers of Blackpool, they listen to this. I know they do. Because I'm good friends with both of them. So I know they listen to this.
Russ was working with me in Britain's Got Talent, and it's sort of like I think I really respect what he's done. It was amazing, and I wish I'd sort of taken some more of his advice during that process. I think I got a bit sort of stuck in my way, you know what I mean? And he was the expert on TV, but I had my own ideas as well. You sometimes creatively you just sort of. I felt like probably in that process that if I didn't do my own thing, I'd have regretted it at the end. But I should maybe have been a wee bit open. So yeah, Russ, if you're listening, maybe you were right on a few more things than I care to admit at the time. Right? That's all you're getting from me. That's all you're getting from me.
Well, if he's listening, I would love to see you compare Blackpool. I think that would be amazing.
Oh yeah, I've already worked out what I'm going to do at half time as well. I'll tell you what, I've got a new gag. I'll tell you after we're finished doing the magic world finding out about it. Not yet, Craig. They're not ready.
Not yet. It sounds like you've got huge goals, and that's amazing, Kevin. And congratulations on all your success. Seriously, I mean, if you went back to your early 20s when you were a research physicist and you told that person then that in 10, 12, 15 years time you'd be here right now, I don't think you probably would have believed your future self. So the fact that you've achieved so much and literally changed careers just because of a TV program called Faking It, and that was the catalyst. I mean, what a story. That's great.
Yeah, it's very unexpected. It just it did change my life. It really did. That meeting my wife, there's big moments in my life having kids. Obviously the normal stuff, but yeah, that from a sort of magic point of view, yeah, I would never have been a magician had it not been for that show, had it not been for that lightning strike. I don't know where I'd be, but I would definitely not be a magician. And that's the other thing. I always feel like I want to, especially in my local area. I'm going to throw this in. I know we're wrapping up, Craig, but this year, one thing that gave me so much joy was this new program I made called Future Magicians. And we've always done stuff for kids aged 7 to 10, right? And we've always had success there. But with Magic Festival, we've always tried to do something for adolescents, for teenagers. And it's always been a stumbling block because kids, you can have an 11-year-old and a 16-year-old, right? And the 11-year-old could have been doing magic for 5 years and know every kind of card trick under the sun. The 16-year-old could know nothing and just be started like last week and maybe still struggling with a double lift, right? There's so many different people against. We could never have a classroom full of kids, say from 11 to 15 or whatever, in a room learning from a magician. It was just too difficult. So I created this thing called Future Magicians after there was these young magicians bugging me during the Edinburgh Fringe, and I promised them I'd try and help them somehow. And it was like a guided mentorship program. So I got people like Elliot involved, and we opened this thing up to any magician who was interested, mainly Scottish because it was just a bit easier logistically. And they were mentored one-on-one with a professional magician. I married them up with kind of like a sort of speed dating isn't the right word, but something that married up with what their interests were with a magician, what a sort of senior, let's call it a mentor magician's interests were. And I used some of the capital that I built up as the Magic Festival director, just pulled in some strings and some favors and got these magicians to commit half an hour a week, right? These senior magicians would half an hour a week, they would watch a video of their young magicians act, and then they would comment on it. And the goal was during the festival, we'd take these 5 magicians and we put them on stage, we'd do a show, and it's part of the Magic Festival. They could bring their family and friends along, blah, blah, blah. But during that process, like a month before the show, we got them all into the theatre and they had to have their acts ready. They came onto the stage and they performed their. It's not a competition, right? So as I said to the kids, it's not like the Magic Circle's Young Magician of the Year or something like that. The only person you're in competition with is who you were 3 months ago, 6 months ago. You're only trying to self-improvement is your only goal here, right? And if you can do that together as a team, then great. But a month before the show, we got them all into the theatre. They performed their act in front of the mentors. But I also brought some other people in, like Richard Wiseman, who I'm friends with up here in Edinburgh. Will Houston was in town, Magic Circle editor, magazine editor. Dusty, my mentor. Don Jack, who's very well respected manager, I guess, up here in Scotland, entertainment manager, an artist, creative. And they all fed back to these young magicians, and like the transformation in 2-3 months with very minimal time commitment from these professionals, who I'm ever grateful that they did this, to when they performed on stage 3 months later, it was just massive. You know, it's huge. And now, like, I've been starting to, because the Young Magic Circle, I know this is a competition, but the Young Magician of the Year in the Magic Circle, I've been encouraging this cohort of 5 magicians to apply and go down. And I think 2 of them are now going to go down as like a little group, just to go and try and see how well they do in the Young Magician of the Year. But the point I'm making is we're going to do this next year. So if you are over 11, say 11 to 18, that kind of area, and you're like, we need to have someone who's expressed an interest beyond getting a Dynamo set or whatever the Paul Daniels magic set equivalent is. Someone who's actually interested in magic, who wants to learn a bit more presentational skills. You can go on this course. It was free back then. It'll probably be free next year as well. Like, there's no cost to the Young Magician in this. I cover all the production, the promotion, and the stage, and all that sort of stuff. And come on this, and I think we've got room for 5 or 6 young magicians every year, and if you want. So yeah, the things I was going to promote at the end of this were the Magic Festival website. That's magicfest.co.uk. You can find Virtual Magic School there year, and also some information about future magicians, and also my own website, quantummagician.com, which is easy enough to find as well. So yeah, I thought I'd get that in there, because I imagine that a lot of your demographic are going to be these young magicians who are up.
I do have a lot of young magicians watching this, yeah, and I'm really passionate about helping them. They are the future, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, well, while I'm on the note, I've started a collaboration with the Lyceum Theatre here in Edinburgh, and we're going to do our first half-day course in May this year. In magic and theatre. So it's going to be me from the magic side working with Sophie from the Lyceum's theatre side, and we're going to take 3 aspects of theatre that we think are most have the highest importance to most magical performances. So things like presence, storytelling, and there's one other that escapes me at the moment. We're going to drill down on those areas, and then bring people from the world of magic and the world of theatre together, and see if we can find any overlap, any improvements that we can make. So again, that's something else. It's not on sale yet, but I mean, if you follow me on whatever Twitch, Twinstagram, and all that, so you'll find I'll talk about it soon enough.
I was going to say, what are you on Instagram and Twitter as well? So people.
Yeah, so Kevin Quantum. Yeah, so everything's quite. If you at Kevin Quantum or /Kevin Quantum, all one word. Even kevinquantum.com as well for the website. It's all quite unified, which is nice. Not many Kevin Quantums out there. And Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are my main outlets. I'm not a super prolific poster. You know, I really have time for it, to be honest with you. But I do use it, especially around times when I'm making something that's of value to people. That's when usually I most would use it. So I kind of hijacked your ending there, Craig. Sorry, I just.
No, I'm really glad to hear about that. I mean, that I didn't realize, and that's fantastic, Kevin. It really is.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, there's only so much I can do, but like, you know, I always suffer from the same. Like, I feel my position, like what I've been given, right, this career, and also the fact that I've got this head on my shoulders, this maybe a slightly more logical brain, or maybe a scientific brain, let's say, that if I apply that in the right ways, I can manage my time, but also create other structures that will benefit the community in some way. I'm not inclined to release magic tricks or DVDs, or maybe I will in the future, but I do know I have the structure inside the Magic Festival, which I'm promoting here in my t-shirt, that can use their structures and the audience and the goodwill we've built up over a decade to help this next generation, and give and really make it accessible, Craig, right? Because like, there's so many things that are out there cost so much money, and I was so proud to make this a free course, a free. Future Magicians was free, like half an hour mentorship a week from a magician. You time in the theater, the feedback from all these pros, the show at the end of it, it's all free. Virtual magic school for the 7-10-year-olds, all free, right? So all of this stuff is out there, and it's really high quality. And I feel it's I'm again lucky that I managed to leverage my sort of my contacts and whatnot, and to make these things work. But they're use them. I think you'll benefit from them. If you're a young magician and you're interested in this sort of stuff, then do check them out.
That's amazing. I know that I've just come back from the session convention.
Yeah, how was it? I'm gutted I missed it again.
It was great, but Vanishing Ink had this scholarship program for all of the young magicians. So if you're a parent of a young magician, you could apply for a scholarship, and they had dozens of sort of 10 to 17-year-old kids there that loved magic, and they paid for their parents to come along, and they paid for the kids to come along and get the session the whole time. And I think there should be more of that happening. I know that Blackpool are doing that this year. I know there's going to be
about time.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
No, I think Rob and Andy have kind of trailblazed this a lot, and that kind of magic convention world. As far as I can see, I don't know the full industry, but Vanishing Ink have such a big reach. You find out about their stuff quite easily. So I've always admired that, that aspect of it. There's a guy I met in New Zealand, a guy called Brendan Dooley. It's wonderful, a magician from Christchurch, and he benefited from the Magic Ink's scholarship to one of their American, I think Magi Fest or something like that, one of their conventions in America. He loved it, and he was waxing lyrical about it as well. So I think I feel like the magic community are really giving. They really want to help. They have a lot of them have time on their hands as well, and that's great. All I can do, what I can do in my end is maybe I'm a bit more time poor. I might not be able to commit to mentorship, but I can create a structure, right? I can create a structure that makes it really easy for people to give their time. I can find these young kids. I can find these experienced people. I can give this end product, and it was so rewarding, Craig. Honestly, being in that room, watching these kids get feedback, especially in that month before, just like the buzz was just phenomenal. And I felt like, and because of that, we got this on BBC television, BBC News, we got on BBC Radio, the BBC website covered it as well. Because we're doing this thing, I know this is like the sort of more selfish side of it, but this wasn't my goal, but this was one of those things that people picked up on. When you give and you give to the community, you find there's other ways that come back to you. And that was one of those lovely things that these kids will now always have, this like BBC thing that they recorded, and they can, I was on television, whatever, even if that's it, that's great. I'm really happy to hear that. And they've got that for their website, whatever, it's a wonderful outcome. But then also the improvement was just, it was really remarkable as well. So it's positive, really positive. It was 4 guys and 1 girl as well. So, there's always a gender balance with magic that, it's been brought to my attention a few times. I've often been criticized as a producer that I've not programmed enough female magicians. There's not a lot I can do when less than 5% of the community are female. What I can do though is try and provide a platform to get girls into magic, which I feel is what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And this is just the next step in that journey for me. And fingers crossed, I know it's like, maybe, I don't know if it's talked a lot about or not. I don't really hang about in as many magic circles as I used to, but I notice it, and it comes up at gigs. So I guess it must be a thing somewhere for some people. So, but yeah, if you're passionate about it, and the platform's there, and hopefully we can, keep on doing it.
Absolutely, 100%. And if people want to get involved, what was the website again? And we'll put it down below.
So the Magic Festival, magicfest.co.uk. You'll find the Virtual Magic School and the Future Magicians info there, and kevinquantum.com for my stuff. And I hope it'd be lovely to hear from people who've listened to this or watched this, getting in touch if they want to be, because we'll really try and find ways to make it work. We always do.
Well, yeah, I would love to help in any way that I can. I'll tell you that right now. If there's something I can help, 100%. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to feel that way as well. But Kevin, this has been an incredible interview. Thank you so much. It's been a long time going. You're a hard man to nail down, but I'm so glad that I've managed to get hold of you, because this has been truly, and I mean this, has been such an inspirational and motivational interview, just to listen to your journey and how you've gone from, you know, you've taken risks, you've had a vision, you've had a clear mental image of what you want to do, and you've just gone out and you made it happen. And it just shows you can do this if you want to. And I know that this is going to inspire a lot of magicians that have heard this. So thank you.
Summing up like that makes it, yeah. But like, again, I surround myself with good people. You know, I really do. I've got a great wife who's interested in magic, a really solid fan base. Wish I had a really solid fan base. They're a bit flaky, my fans. only joking fans. And yeah, just like being surrounded with good people, creative people, people that are willing to take risks, people that are really just upbeat about. Yeah, they can be sarcastic, they can be a bit cheeky, they can be the people that sort of call you out on things, right? I think I quite like being challenged by people, but as long as I've got your best interests at heart, then that's who I surround myself with, and that's the people that I like to help as well along my journey.
That's perfect. Like Kevin said earlier on, if you want to get in touch, you can do so. I'm going to put in the description down below all the links to the social media and to the URLs to everything we've discussed. But more importantly, leave a comment down below. I'm sure Kevin will read this. Leave a comment down below. Let him know what you thought. This has been a great interview. I've loved it, but let him know down below what you thought. And I'm blown away, Kevin. One more time, thank you so much. Really.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been really, I don't know, I feel really therapeutic getting all this
right.
to the magic community. I feel like I just sort of blow my own trumpet for an hour and a quarter. It was one.
Man, you've got a lot to blow about. You have got, you know, I mean, don't you? No, I've got a friend who's a motivational speaker. His name is Brad Burton, and he always says, "Don't mute your own brilliance." You know, and it's true. You know, don't you know, you've achieved a lot. Be proud of it. You should do, because honestly, there's a lot of people who try their hardest and don't come even close to what you've achieved at this point where you are right now. And I have a feeling that you're going to be doing an awful lot more. So
I hope so. Yeah. I hope so. Yeah, it's I'm still incredibly ambitious. It's hard for me. I wake up sometimes, as you probably do, and just can't get back to sleep because my head's full of all the things that I need to be doing. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, Craig. Honestly, I've really enjoyed it. I hope this is useful to some of your listeners.
You will be.
There's so many people out there that are at our level or experience who've got something to give. You're giving so much of your time and effort by doing this, and there's so many other. That's the wonderful thing about the magic community. And I don't think I'm alone in being altruistic or giving my time away, because, like I said, there's so many other people out there that do it. And if you're a young magician, you can find someone who is at your local club or whatever, and other structures around you, then just take advantage of them. People want to help. Don't ever be afraid to ask. I mean, it'd be obviously ideal if we would say, do you want help? But sometimes that doesn't happen. You need to make yourself known. Yeah. So don't ever be afraid to say hi.
Perfect. Like I said, everybody, leave a comment down below. Follow Kevin on every single piece of social media that you can. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more things from him in the very near future. But on behalf of Kevin, I'll see you again soon. Guys, thank you very much. See you soon. My name's Craig from Magic TV. And that's Kevin Quantum, the legend.